Hello there. Today we're going to be having a look at sailor music nibs. Now, music nibs were, as the name suggests, developed originally for writing musical notation. But a number of people have noticed that they've got rather nice looking stub nibs. And maybe they're good for everyday writing. So we're going to have a look, and we're also going to have a bit of a write as well. And hopefully you'll be able to draw some conclusions from what you see. So with no further ado, down to the writing. Okay then, so before we move on to writing with these, because I suppose that's the idea of any proper review, isn't it? We'll pause to note that this is a PG Slim and this is a 1911 large, which for those of you who know your sailors will reveal the fact that there is a 21 carat version of the music nib and a 14 carat version of it, and it's available on both the Professional Gear series and the 1911 series. So, although usually it's got to be said on the black pens, it's also available on the Riallo, and I think the only one that comes to standard on a coloured pen is a maroon Riallo. So there you go. Right, now let's start to take a bit of a look here at what music nibs look like. So, well, the first thing to notice is that it's quite stubby, quite obviously stubby. I'm just going to actually change and move in a little bit so we can get an even better look. There we are. So that's the nib, that's the top end, and if you look at the bottom end, you will also see pretty stubby. But those of you who know stubs will be surprised to see that there has clearly at some point been a very large amount of tipping on this, and it's been worked on. And you'll see there's a very distinct flat surface on the bottom here where the tipping ball has been ground flat. But you'll also see that the tipping gives that distinctive bulge which you really don't get on most stubs, and steel stubs tend not to be tipped. So one of the things you're getting here is tipping. So that's the 14 carat version. Just have a quick look at the 21 carat version as well, which is similar. There we are, and here we have the nib from the top, and on the side again very obvious bit of tipping there, but you can see it's coming down to quite a point, and clearly a generous looking stub. There we go. Right, well, I'm just going to pause for a moment and set things up to do a little bit of writing. Right then, we're going to start with the 14 carat version. There we go. And the other thing I should have mentioned, of course, is that it is a single tine music nib. There are double tine versions as well. One of the things about a music nib is that it should be really wet, and that's because it is basically used for writing music. And as we know, if you're writing music, the cross lines need to be thin, but you also need to be able to write your crotchets and minims and that sort of thing. Like that. And I suppose you also need to be able to do, no, the minims. Have a hole in the middle. So the wetness is really so you can fill in the holes fairly easily, and the line variation is for much the same reason actually. So if I wanted to turn that into, I think it's a crotchet, isn't it? Would I? Just like that, so it's quite easy to do. If you write music, these are absolutely brilliant. I don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I think these are actually really nice pens to write with. Now, if you're using it to write music, you will probably using it with either the nib oriented like that, or possibly like that. So you get your thin line and your thick line, and your thing for filling in your crotchets. There we go. When I'm writing with a stub or italic or something like that, I usually rotate the nib a bit like that, and consequently you will see get really nice line variation. Now, I like to get some line variation in my writing. It's pretty horrible, as you can see, but it pleases me anyway. So we get quite a lot of nice variation there. You can probably hear the sound it's making on the paper. There's a little bit of feedback there. The paper is, of course, laid and consequently will give a certain amount of feedback. So there we go. So that's the 14 carat version. And I've got to say, I would use this, and in fact do, for everyday writing. Right, so we're going to have a look at the 21 carat version now. Here we are. Again, single tine, but actually a little bit larger. Let's have a look. The nib itself is bigger, as with all Sailor 21 carat nibs. They're bigger than the 14 carat. Whether there's a great deal in it in terms of the width of the nib, I'm really not very sure, to be honest. But we shall find out when we do a bit of writing. So here we go, dipping again. And thin lines. Thick lines, of course. I've never tried to write music actually, and it probably shows, doesn't it? So here we go. So if we orient the nib like that, we get a very fine vertical line. Now, the first thing I notice is there's a little bit of softness to this, which I suppose you would expect with a 21 carat nib. There's a little bit of give to it. And with a bit of pressure, yeah, I can see the nibs, the tines are just spreading a tiny bit there. So this, much as I like the 14 carat, you'll be astonished to hear I like the 21 carat even better. It doesn't, unfortunately, make my handwriting any better, as I'm sure you've all noticed. Now that's interesting, there's quite a lot more line variation there. What I'm sure you can see with both of these nibs is that they are in fact very pleasantly wet. Very nice to use actually. I would be happy using either of these as an everyday pen. You probably, I mean, you know, if you're a person who goes for fine or extra fine because you've got small writing, this is going to mess it up dreadfully. You'll either have to learn to write big or stay away from music nibs. But I hope you found this helpful. If you've got any questions, do give us a shout. Our email address is on the website. You can get to us quite easily, and we're always happy to answer inquiries. But there we have it, the Sailor music nibs, actually, for your delectation. Thank you very much for listening and watching.